Hey, welcome to Wednesday's edition of Break the Board Sports here, where we give the best handicapping tips, really dive into the games. Yesterday went 1-2 in baseball after that 3-0 day. The main one that we gave out there on social was the Houston Astros. They lose a tough one, 6-5 to the Boston Red Sox, though the Astros still hold a 5-game lead in the AL West. Today on the card, you got the Baltimore Orioles against the New York Mets. Mets minus $1.30 in this one. Sean Manaea will get the start. Two pitchers in this one that's really, both of them have been really hot as of late. Manaea 4-1 with a 2.51 ERA in his last five starts. Eflin, who came over from the Rays to the Orioles in that trade right at the deadline, he's 4-0 with a 2.32 ERA. So two pitchers both performing really, really well. Your over-under set at 8.5. If I had to look at this game, again, you can make a case both ways. Both pitchers have been lights out. Orioles second in OPS. I would take the dog here. Anytime you can get the Orioles at plus money, I think it's a win. Right now, the series is split 1-1. So this is a good rubber match opportunity for them. Boston Red Sox at the Houston Astros. Houston Astros minus 148, plus 125 on the comeback for the Boston Red Sox tonight. Criswell will get the start for them. 7-3 Houston is still in the last 10. Cooper Criswell 3-2 with a 3.76 ERA. In his last five starts, he's never faced the Houston Astros, so this will be kind of uncharted waters for him. And for the Astros, Justin Verlander making his debut back since coming off the DL. I never like to go with a pitcher when they're coming off the DL. To me, it's just one of those handicapping rules. You got to see how the guy's doing. Just like a guy in his first start might say, "Oh, well, there's no book on him," right? And it worked out with Matthews of the Twins. He had a good outing. But you never really know when a guy's making his first start back or when a guy's making his first start ever, kind of how are they going to react? And more importantly, how's their body and their arm going to react? So again, Boston, they're in desperate need of wins here as they set back 4 games back now in the American League wild card. But on this one, it's going to be a no play for me. Again, I like the Orioles plus 110 against the Mets. This one, Red Sox, Astros. I know a lot of people, they're going to lean towards the Houston Astros right now. 75% of tickets and 63% of the money on the Astros. Everybody loves Verlander. The fact that public's all over the Astros, to me, it's either Red Sox or nothing here. You take the plus 125, but I'm not going to step in front of Justin Verlander, even though it is his first start back. And I'm definitely not going to step in front of the team that I think is going to win the American League, and that being the Houston Astros. Moving on, Pittsburgh and Texas, both of those teams have yet to name a starter. Let's see if we can get that pulled up here, see if there's anything breaking as a refresh here. Again, the Pirates got Jermaine Haney going for the Rangers. Rangers minus 158. Pirates are plus 134 on the comeback. This Pirates team, they've just been in a world of trouble lately. Haven't played very well, though they were able to scratch the win last night. Right now, again, plus 135 on the Pirates. To me, it's either Pirates or nothing here. Again, the Rangers are just as much a disappointment, but the Pirates would be the lean. But again, no true play on the Pirates, no true play on the Red Sox. Those are just leans. Take that handicapping angle and do what you like with it. Moving on, Chicago White Sox. They'll go against the San Francisco Giants today. Giants minus 215. They'll throw out Logan Webb, who I absolutely love, stud pitcher. Garrett Crochet will get the start for the White Sox, plus 195 on the comeback. Last night, the San Francisco Giants were able to get the win 4-1. They've won the first 2 games in this series. Crochet has just, I mean, the southpaw has struggled, got off to that hot start, but his last 5 starts have been absolutely atrocious. 1-4 with a 7.27 ERA. Logan Webb, who is always steady Eddie, 3-2 with a 2.43 ERA. Right now, minus 215 is not the kind of thing I like to do, but I'm going to go ahead and ride it, and I'm going to take the Giants here again. Laying minus $2 and all, you can't do that. You got to spot bet it if you do it. Again, I got a dead White Sox team, worst team in Major League history that I've ever seen in my lifetime, against Logan Webb and the Giants, who are still in the playoff push. Giants, though they're 10.5 back in the West, they're still in the mix for the wild card, sitting there only 3.5 back. If you can't beat the White Sox with your best pitcher Logan Webb on the hill, then you got no business quite honestly being in the playoffs. So I'd like to look for them there. I think minus 215 again. Laying $2 is something that you cannot do consistently in sports handicapping or sports gambling. Don't care what the handicap says. You got to be spots. You got to be disciplined. I always talk about discipline. I think it's the number one thing that destroys bettors. Everybody wants to chase, or everybody, wants to let themselves get manipulated by what they hear, what they see. Again, it's all a numbers game. You do the data, you set your own lines, you break it down, you really look at the pitchers. Now more than ever, you have to look at the bullpens, right? The bullpens, I mean, you don't have many starters going past 5, maybe 6 innings anymore, right? The days of the Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, Nolan Ryan, Roger Clemens, Kurt Schilling, those guys just don't walk around much anymore. So bullpens are very, very important. OPS is very important, especially you get a team that's got a really high OPS against a team that's got a really bad bullpen. And then you want to look at the previous couple of days. Hey, how much has that bullpen been stretched, right? If a team's had to go to that bullpen 2-3 straight days in a row, then you want to look at, okay, unless they got a stud going on day 4, you really, really got to look to the other side. And again, you also got to look at bad teams, and the White Sox are just bad. We're going to lay the 215 with the San Francisco Giants. That's actually ticked up to minus 220. So if you're going to grab it now. That line's only going to go up. Arizona Diamondbacks minus 165 with Jordan Montgomery, the southpaw. He'll visit Munoz and the Marlins. Marlins plus 142 on the comeback. Again, Marlins and D-backs in the last 10 meetings, they've split this 5-5. Arizona's taken the first 2 in this series. I see no reason why they won't grab this one. Munoz, not a very good pitcher. Last 5 starts, 1-4 with a 7.77 ERA, and they're still letting this guy go 4 1/3 innings when he throws. Jordan Montgomery, he hasn't been anything special. Really, really struggled. Has had a really, really bad year. But again, at the price minus 165, it's either D-backs or nothing. This time of year, you can't bet dead teams. Marlins, White Sox, they're dead teams. You just can't bet them. I know you might say, hey, well, John, you say you're a dog player, you're a contrarian. I am very much so, but I'm also got to have some common sense when I'm doing it. So again, Diamondbacks or nothing would be the play. The San Diego Padres and the Minnesota Twins. And I got to tell you, this Padres team, again, last night, covered by this team is dangerous, right? When they get all their pitchers back, they are just going to be an absolute nightmare. And listen, they did this with King and Walderon, who's going today. If they get Darvish hurling again, Musgrove, if he's able to get back in his groove, I mean, this Padres team, they got Dylan Cease, Dylan Cease is one of my favorite pitchers in all of baseball. This team is deadly, deadly, deadly. This Padres just, again, last night, they were able to get the come from behind win 7-5. The only advantage for the Twins is the Guardians don't have that much on them, though the Guardians got the win in extra innings against the Yankees last night. But these teams, Padres taking the first 2 in this series, they've split the last 10. Simeon Woods Richardson getting the start for the Twins. He's been really good all year long. However, in his last 5, he started to drop off again. 2-3 with a 4.62 ERA, averaging about 5 innings pitched. But Matt Walderon, though he's 4-1, the ERA is 7.36. So not something you want to write home about here with him either. He's really struggled as of late. Your over under setting at 8.5. The over plus 105. I think that's great value. I'm not an over under player. It's not something I've ever been very good at. I was hearing Matt Humans talk about this the other night, or last night rather, is when you're a handicapper, don't try to get out of your norm. Do what you do. And if you do what you do, you'll be fine. When you start, trying to, you can dabble a little bit, but you can't, if you're handicapped and you setting your lines puts you one way, and that's what you've always did, you got to stay that direction. You got to stay that way. So I really took from that is, hey, I'm not an over-under guy. I've never, to me, it takes enough work, just like props. There's some really great prop people. We're going to have some of them start joining the show because I know people love props. That's a big thing. And I want us to be able to help prop players. I'm just not your guy for that, right? I'm a sides guy. Occasionally I'll have some good teasers, especially in the NFL. I think NFL is perfect place to tease. College football, very rarely you're going to get a teaser from me because they're two different beasts, right? I always talk about if you turn it on NFL Sunday, they got the witching hour there on the red zone for a reason. 80% of the NFL games are going to come down to the last 5 minutes. Last 5 minutes means the score is probably going to be close. College football, Alabama can be up 42-6 with a minute and a half to go. And instead of kneeling the ball, they're running and breaking a run for 70-some yards. And now Alabama, you were catching plus 42.5 and you lost your bet, right? So you see that all the time. I'm just a sides guy, but however, I do like this total over 8.5 when both of these pitchers combined are giving up about 11.6 runs per game. I think the over at plus money may be a sucker bet, but I'll go ahead and ride that and take the over with the Twins and the Padres. Moving on, the Colorado Rockies visit the Washington Nationals. Two, again, dead teams. Washington's taken 6 of the last 10. Washington is going to be throwing out Mitchell Parker, 2-3 in his last 5 with a 6.56 ERA. The Rockies 1-4 with a 6.97 ERA. Nationals minus 158 at FanDuel, plus 135 on the comeback for the Colorado Rockies. Your over-under sets at 8.5. Juiced minus 115 to the under, minus 105 to the over. To me, again, not a side here I'm really crazy about. This is game 2 in the series. The way I look at it, I think for me, it's either the over or nothing here. Again, I know over-under's not a strength of mine. I really don't like either side. You got 2 dead teams, 2 dead pitchers. But if you're going to look for an edge, if you're a prop guy, maybe there's some good props there for you that you can look at. Again, I know something that I've heard a lot of people start talking about. Apparently, only DraftKings is the only one that does it. Is this not to bat in the bottom of the 9th with a home team? Cut down on a little bit of the juice. If you like the Nats and you're signed up with DraftKings, maybe that's something you look to. I've personally never played it, so I don't want to act like I have and try to copycat somebody else. I'll give the credit to somebody else. But I have heard that's something that people are trying to do. So if you have DraftKings, look into it. If you're a FanDuel, Barstool, Offshore, MGM, I haven't saw them on those platforms. But again, if somebody does, please message me. Moving on, Cleveland Indians will visit the New York Yankees. Nestor Cortez going to get the start for the Yankees. Cantileo is going to get the start for the Guardians. Again, Guardians were able to get it done last night. Right now, folks, Yankees minus 185, plus 150 on the comeback for the Guardians. Over under 8.5, juiced minus 122 to the under. I have to be extremely honest here. I'm not going to give out anything with the New York Yankees. That team, you can't trust them until they get smart and they let go of Cashman and they let go of Boone and they restart. I say it all the time. This team is an absolute disgrace to George Steinbrenner Sr. and what he built. They got the tools. They should be able to get this done, and they just keep sputtering and sputtering and sputtering. They should walk to the World Series. However, I'm not going to be surprised if they get bounced in the first round, right? If they have to go the route of the wild card, right now, if you look at the World Series odds, Yankees second best odds 5.5 to 1, right behind the Dodgers at 3.5 to 1. And I got to tell you, if you're riding the Dodgers or the Yankees, it ain't happening. I would look at the Astros 9.5 to 1. I love the Phillies 6.5 to 1. I know the Phillies have been a little topsy turvy. I think if you're looking for value, listen, this Diamondbacks team at 20 to 1, I think is great value. That team was just there. But as far as the Yankees go, I want nothing to do with them and Nestor Cortez. Cortez, 4.2 ERA on the year. However, in his last 5 starts, 2-3 with a 6.58, he's just been absolutely horrific. You can't get down on that guy at all right now. So just a pass there. Cincinnati Reds at the Toronto Blue Jays. Reds will send Nick Martinez. Blue Jays will send out Rodriguez. Reds -110, -105 on the Toronto Blue Jays. You're over under 8.5, -110 both ways. Blue Jays, they've been able to take 7 of the last 4 meetings. Reds, Nick Martinez, though his record's 1-4, in his last 5 starts, he hasn't been all that bad. A 3.58 ERA, averaging about 5 1/3 innings pitched. All time against Toronto, he's 2-0. All right. Again, you got to go back to 2017, 2014 for that. So the data really doesn't help there as far as that goes. But his last 5 starts, he's been pretty solid. Yariel Rodriguez, 1-4, but a 4.15 ERA. Any time a guy ticks up over 3.5 ERA, I tend to stay away from them, especially in their last 5. Again, sometimes we get stuck. Like if you pull up, regular websites and MLB.com or an ESPN, they're going to give you the guy's ERA. That's for the whole year. I want to look at his last 5 starts, right? Because if the guy threw 3 shutouts to start out the year, but then his last 5 starts have sucked, well, that ERA is influenced greatly, right? So you got to be real careful about where you're getting your information. Again, I'm a big fan. I think Beason does a good job. I think Adam Chernoff, Brad Powers does a good job, especially in football with those 2 guys. You can get some good information from covers. Sometimes they don't update their stuff as quickly as you would like, but you got to have a lot of different platforms that you pull a bunch of data in and you're just studying and you're digging through it and then you're fact checking it, right? So again, a lot of work you guys don't have time to do at Break the Board Sports. That's what the team here does. Again, on this one, 2 bad teams, not some I really want to get involved in. Again, the Reds, I think they're done. They're out of it for sure. But I do like their lineup. It hasn't hit this year. They really fell off. But I think if you were going to go one way or the other, I think the lean here is the Cincinnati Reds. Again, Nick Martinez has been good. I still just feel like in my gut at some point in time that Reds lineup, they got to show up, right? At some point in time, that lineup's going to show up. But again, I think there's some better opportunities on the board. Again, baseball is really hard. You really want to pick out 1 to 3 plays. Occasionally, you may have a day where you like 5. But baseball, it's really easy to have an 0 for day. Like, it's really easy, especially, NFL, if you bet 6 games and you're Joe the plumber or Phil the restaurant guy or Tim the real estate guy that's like, busy making moves, you don't have time to break it down. But just blindly in the NFL, if you pick 4 games, you'll win 1 of them, right? Some of you will even go 2-2, and now you're just out the juice. You got your entertainment. You didn't make any money. You lost money, but you got your entertainment, your kicks and giggles. But baseball, you bet 4 games, it's real easy to go 0-4. There's so many different dynamics. You hear people talk about it all the time. You got to be either crazy to bet baseball or really, really disciplined and like to study. And even me, I got to be honest, as football and doing the work of football, I'm really jazzed for football season. Baseball, now it's just trying to pick spots. So again, trying to pick spots, I'll lay a minus 220 with the San Francisco Giants. Not something I normally do. But again, best pitcher against a bad team. I'd rather do that than try to look for an angle on the Rockies, Nationals, or Reds, Blue Jays, teams that are just absolutely out of it. Now, I do think there's value, like I said, the Twins, Padres over. And I think there's value anytime you get even pitchers. And the Mets struggle to score at times. I do like the Orioles at plus money. So again, Orioles plus 110 is a lean. Giants minus 220. Grab it now. I think that line will probably touch minus 250. You don't want to get juiced out there more than you already are. You're already way stretched at minus 220. But again, that's something we'll tinker with today. Philadelphia Phillies and the Atlanta Braves. Braves 6 back. Braves have just kind of been floundering. They're holding on for dear life to that last spot. However, last night they were able to beat Zach Wheeler, which is huge. These two teams always play each other really, really tough. Though Atlanta has taken 6 of the last 10. Right now, minus 110 both ways. Aaron Nola, 1-4 with a 3.07 his last 5 starts. Max Fried, 1-4 with a 6.31. Max Fried, 1-2 and 1-1 this year against the Phillies. But in both of those starts, he allowed 5 runs in one, 3 in the other. So he has really struggled. Nola has made 2 starts. Again, he's 1-1, 6 runs. His first outing against Atlanta gave up 3 in his next. But the one he gave up 3, he went 6 innings, 5 hits, 3 earns, all of them 3 runs, all of them earned, and 8 strikeouts. Again, I'm not an Aaron Nola guy. I never have been. It's just not a guy that does it for me. But I will say I'm going to ride the Phillies again today to even the series up here 1-1. Milwaukee Brewers, they absolutely have owned the Cardinals. They've won 9 of the last 10. They were able to get the win last night. And yet you turn right around and the Cardinals are minus 115 favorites again. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Brewers minus 102. Tobias Myers 3-2 with a 1.9 ERA in his last 5 starts. Kyle Gibson 1-4 with a 4.60. I'm probably going to get bit. This is probably going to happen. What's going to happen is the Brewers have been dominating all year long, have been dominating the Cardinals, and I've been on the Cardinals. Today, I'll take the Brewers and the Cardinals a win. Hey, my luck, but you got to take the Brewers. There's no reason Milwaukee should be an underdog to the St. Louis Cardinals. And I got to tell you what, you got to start taking the Brewers seriously and maybe looking at some futures there and putting on them. I mean, this team just keeps producing. And when I look at it right now, depending on where you go, you can get the Milwaukee Brewers 22-1 right now to win the World Series. Brewers and Diamondbacks, I think, have extreme value. Again, Astros 9-1, Brewers 22-1, Diamondbacks 20-1. I think there's some value there you can look at and pull for sure there and get you 2 long shots. Again, I'm still a big fan of the Phillies, but listen, the Brewers just keep winning. And like at some point in time, I got to just swallow it and say, the Brewers keep winning. You got to start backing them. They've owned St. Louis, like I said, will probably get beat. But Milwaukee Brewers, we're going to add that today. Detroit Tigers at the Chicago Cubs. Cubs minus 162, plus 135 on the comeback. Detroit doesn't have a star yet. James Taillon will get the call for the Chicago Cubs. Cubs got the win last night against Detroit. Taillon in his last 5, 1-4 with a 5.34 ERA. Nothing here that I see I want any part of with the Tigers and the Cubs. Again, if you're a prop player, you're over-under set at 7.5. Maybe you look at something there. So there's a couple different ways you could go with it. But again, dealer's choice on that one. There's no real angle where I can make an argument either way, like, hey, take the Tigers, hey, take the Cubs again. This time of year, it's really, really hard to get behind dead teams, right? It's really, really hard. Maybe you get a phenom pitcher that, you know, and you get some phenom kids out of the farm system and they get rolling, maybe that's something you lean towards. But again, nothing here on this one. Johnny Cueto making a comeback with the Anaheim Angels. Kansas City Royals are going to throw Michael Lorenzen. Royals minus 180, plus 155 on the comeback for the LA Angels. 91% of the bets on the Royals and 94% of the handle on the Royals as far as betting splits go. Just because of that, I know Johnny Cueto, and you say, John, you said you don't like guys making their first start of the season. But listen, they've split the first two games of this series. Angels won last night 9-5. Royals had 5-3. If I'm going to make a play, I got to take the team nobody else is on just to be a contrarian. Michael Lorenzen hasn't been great in his last 5, 1-2 with a 4.64 ERA. Not anything to write home about there. So again, I would lean Angels, but that's not a play that we're going to give out and say, hey, go bet that. Again, however, I am going to say the Milwaukee Brewers minus 105, the Phillies minus 105, the over 8. There's a couple 8s still out there. I know it's at 8.5. I do see a couple 8s here. It's starting to get juiced, though, minus 120. But the over in the Minnesota Twins, San Diego Padres game, again, I know the line's high. I told you at Giants, it was 215 when we hopped on air 27 minutes ago. It's already up. It went to 220. It's already up to 225. Again, like I said, you got to get it now. And then the Orioles plus 110. Those are the 5 plays so far that if I was going to make a play, that's the way I would go today. Tampa Bay Rays against the Oakland Athletics today. Tampa has taken 8 of the last 10. As far as on the bump, you got PDI going for the Rays, and Michael Spence going for the A's. Minus 135 are the Rays on the road, plus 115 on the comeback for the Oakland A's. Again, I would actually lean A's here, believe it or not. If I was going to make a play and say, hey, which way you want to go, I would actually go with the A's here, despite, again, being a dead team. We were talking about dead teams. When you look at the A's, Spence 7-8 with a 4.64, PPI 6-5 with a 3.69. Yesterday, again, able to get home with the victory was the Tampa Bay Rays. 1-0, and they got them the day before. So I like the A's to avoid the sweep here. Again, I think there's better plays. Orioles, Phillies, Brewers, over in the Twins game. I think all those are much better plays in the San Francisco Giants than dealing with the Rays and the A's. But again, the angle, I like the A's. The A's can really hit, despite yesterday only scratching not even a single run. Moving right along, Seattle Mariners, Logan Gilbert, Jeff Flaherty goes for the Dodgers. Dodgers have absolutely owned the Mariners. 9 of the last 10 have went to the Dodgers, including the first 2 games of this series. Mariners throw Logan Gilbert 1-4 with a 3.77. But as we've said before over the past couple of weeks, Mariners pitching isn't the problem. Mariners just can't score runs. I mean, they just can't score. They scored no runs in game 1 of this series. They scored 3 last night, but then they give up 6. The pitching lets them down. Flaherty 2-1 with a 2.86 ERA. I'm not excited about laying $1.80 with the Dodgers. I'll tell you that right now. But to me, I think when you look at that, it's got to be Dodgers or nothing. I don't see how you could step in front of. I don't see how you could step in front of the LA Dodgers at home. Again, I don't think the Dodgers are going to make the World Series. I know that's a push from a lot of people. Not something that I think you should really step out there and do. But I'll back them today minus the 180. But again, just to put a bow on the baseball here, Baltimore Orioles plus 110 with Eflin. Giants, that's done crept up to minus 230. That thing just keeps climbing. I'm going to cap it at 230. Anything over 230, don't play it. 230, still play the San Francisco Giants. third play is going to be the over 8. There's a couple 8s out there. It's juice minus 120, but we'll go with the over 8 in the Twins-Padres game. Fourth play will be the Phillies with Aaron Nola minus 105. And then the Milwaukee Brewers, again, I'll probably get beat because I hop on them, but the Brewers minus 105 at the St. Louis Cardinals is the way to go. Those are going to be the 5 we lean with today. Moving over to college football, man, this line opened up 14.5. It just keeps dropping like a rock here with Florida State and Georgia Tech. They're going to kick it off Saturday in Dublin. I'm really interested to see, does this line really get below 10, right? So you got MGM's got it 10. DraftKings, I see, still got 10.5. I love an 11. Listen, when you see 26% of the bets on Georgia Tech, but they got 52% of the money, but 74% of the bets and only 48% of the handle is on Florida State, the books got what they want. Remember, the books want a 50-50 split because no matter what happens, then they get the juice, right? Juice adds up. That's why we always talk about units, juice size. That's why it's very, very, very important that you stay disciplined to that. But when I see 74% of the tickets on Florida State and 26% on Georgia Tech, it makes me ponder there right now. Florida State 9-1 in their last 10, but listen, the last 7 times these teams have hooked up, Georgia Tech actually owns the edge, 4-3, but they're 1-5-1 ATS. So just going back through 2022 at Florida State, 41-16, Florida State rolls. 2020 at Florida State, Georgia Tech pulls out the 16-13 win. 2015, Georgia Tech 22-16. Again, you got to look. This thing is on a neutral field. You're over under 55.5. I think there's some value with the under as well. I think if you can get Georgia Tech plus 11, I know you've lost a field goal's worth of value. I think that's a good play. I like King coming back for Georgia Tech. Listen, Florida State's lost a ton, right? Jordan Travis isn't there. You lose 5 defensive players to the NFL draft. You lose Blackman, the wide receiver. Like, Florida State had a really good year last year, but I think, again, Georgia was a machine. But that that college football playoff game against Georgia really, really set it up for me as to say, okay, or not college football playoff game. Apologize. That New Year's Six bowl game. Apologies there. Really, I think set the tone for. I know people have Florida State ranked top 10. I've seen them as low as 12 in polls, but they've mainly been hanging around that 10 spot. Florida State's going to take a step back. Okay, they're just going to take a step back. I don't think they're better than Clemson. I don't think they're better than Miami. I think you can make the case that SMU's better, right? I really like that SMU Mustang team. So for Florida State, you come in, neutral site game across the pond against a coach in his second year, King back at quarterback. There's a lot of good things Georgia Tech has going for them. I think Georgia Tech plus 11. You got to get 11. And again, that thing has dropped. It was 14.5 at one time. I was able to get 14 early on. I wanted to grab it because I thought this may happen where the line keeps shrinking, right? But the ticket count is still upside down, right? So, again, right now, you got a lot of steam, Georgia Tech. I'll be interested to see. It's Wednesday now. This game goes off Saturday morning. I'm going to be interested to see where this line goes on Friday. I think the books are on the side of Georgia Tech anyway. They want you to bet Florida State. Now, listen, Florida State come out and it'd be 21-0 in no time. I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think they got to get their legs under them. I don't think it's the same team. You know, yes, trends are important. I always talk about last 5 years, last 10 years, but there's so much happening in college football, and college football has gotten really hard to cap. I had my worst year in college football that I've had in 19 years. I've been doing this for 21. It's been 19 years since I had a college football season that bad, right? We were only 1.7 units over 500. Thank God the NFL bailed us out, right? We were lights out in the NFL, kind of made up for it. but it really hurt because college football has always been a 30 to 40 unit a season above. And that's without futures or anything like that. That's just week to week picking, 3 to 5, sometimes 7 games, depending on the card. But that Georgia Tech, if you can give them 11, I think Georgia Tech is the side. We'll break it down a little bit more in depth on Friday, but just a little teaser there. I do like Georgia Tech plus 11 over across the pond. Montana State in New Mexico. Montana State laying 11.5. At one point in time, this thing was setting at 9.5. 55% of the tickets are on Montana State, 45% on New Mexico. The handle 67% Montana State, 33 on the Lobos. Bronco Mendenhall, first year at New Mexico. SMU, everybody loves them. The line's up to 25, 67% of the ticket count on the Mustangs, only 33 on the Wolfpack in Nevada. 71% of the handle laying on SMU, 29% Nevada. And then there's the game where I don't know how you can take Delaware State because they can't even get on the daggone plane correctly. Hawaii up to 39, 83% of the handle on Hawaii, only 17% on Delaware State. Again, Delaware State missed their flight to Hawaii. I assume they're getting over there one way or the other, but that's your last game on Saturday. I can't lay 39 with Hawaii. I don't think Hawaii's going to be that improved, but I'm certainly, even though I'm a dog player and a contrarian, and the numbers may say to take a peek at Delaware State, I won't take a peek. I'm just going to leave it alone there and let that ride. So for me, we'll break them down more Friday, but where I'm at right now, the only play we're going to have Saturday is we're going to have Georgia Tech plus the 11. Again, I think there could be some value on the under 55.5. I do think that is legit to take an under there. Again, I don't believe in teasers in college football. I believe them in the NFL. But I will say, from a spot perspective, Georgia Tech plus 17 or plus 18 with the under 62.5 and a two-team 7-pointer. Juice is minus 130 to minus 140, depending on your book. I could probably be swayed into that. But again, we'll touch on that Friday, go into that a little bit more in depth. Then we circle back around next Thursday. North Carolina will visit Minnesota. Minnesota is laying 2.5. Ticket count pretty much even here, 51% Minnesota, 49% North Carolina, but 77% of the handle goes to the Golden Gophers, 23% goes to the Tar Heels. Coastal Carolina at Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State laying 3.5. 38% of the handle on Jacksonville State, 62% Coastal Carolina. And then the big one Thursday night that I'm really, really interested to see. The line is ticked up to 9. Prime and his son Shedeur Sanders of Colorado. They're going to be hosting the North Dakota State Bison, a great program there for many, many years. 77% of the tickets on Colorado. 23% of the tickets are on the Bison. 82% of the handle Colorado, 18% on the Bison. I think you got to take a look at North Dakota State here. I'm sure they're going to try to run the ball. I want to see how improved is that Colorado defense, right? Because it was like Swiss cheese last year. North Dakota State, if they can run the ball, keep the ball on the ground and manage the clock, and not let Sanders and Hunter, not let them hook up and get in a rhythm, North Dakota State could hang in this one. I just want to see what is Colorado, right? Like, came out gangbusters last year. Last year, we gave them out against TCU week 1. We're able to get the win. And then from there on, it just kind of dropped off more and more. We had Colorado State against them, got the cover. Like, there's just I want to see, can Colorado keep this thing trucking along the whole year? But I think this first game against the Bison is going to be a bigger test than people are giving it credit for. So Friday, not really good games. You got Temple at Oklahoma laying 42.5. Florida Atlantic at Michigan State laying 11.5. I want to dig into this game more next week. I go through every team, do my own power rankings, my own breakdown of each team. And then I take that and make my own lines, which I've did, and I've compared it here. And I just think this game should be way closer, right? I think Michigan State I had as a 7.5 point favorite. I feel like I'm getting 4 points value to my line. I don't believe in Michigan State. I know Florida Atlantic is no bargain. But look, here's the other thing. When you're only getting 16% of the bets and 8% of the handle, and the line's not moving all that much, I tend to lean towards the Owls. Again, not some make a play, but that's one that's on my radar. Okay, let's see where the market goes. Let's see where the trend goes. And can we find an edge there, right? Again, not saying I'm hopping on Florida Atlantic, just the way the line is against my power rankings line, and then seeing where the money's at in the bet count. I just want to see where that thing flows for us. Western Michigan at Wisconsin. Wisconsin laying 24. TCU laying 8.5 at Stanford. This TCU Stanford on the betting splits is pretty phenomenal here. TCU's getting 65% of the ticket count, but only 15% of the handle. Stanford, 35% of the ticket count, but 85% of the handle. This is absolutely pro versus Joe here, right? 100%. And I just want to see, are we, is it going to stay that way? Is it going to stay pro versus Joe that big of a swing? If it is, just based off rules and philosophy, I'm going to have to get down on the Cardinal of Stanford. TCU, huge disappointment last year. They really took a step back, but again, losing Max Duggan and that team they had, I mean, they were electric again to the national championship game before they got rolled by Georgia. But Stanford, if this line ticks up and the betting split stays the way it is, just based off philosophy and what I like to look for, and on top of it, a home dog. I say this all the time. College basketball, college football, home field is such an advantage. I'm not saying it's not an advantage. Like, I don't put a lot of stock into it in baseball. I don't really put a lot of stock into it in the NBA. I don't really put a lot of stock into it. Maybe some in hockey I do, more than the NBA and Major League Baseball I do. And the NFL, it depends, right? Like, I put a lot of stock into the Steelers, the Seahawks, the Chiefs at home. I put absolutely no stock into a Rams or Chargers home game. I put absolutely no stock into a Cardinals or Raiders home game. I put absolutely no stock into a New York Giants game, right? Like, those teams, I just don't. Now, again, game at the Chiefs, game at the Eagles, game at the Seahawks, game at the Steelers, tough places to play. Like Miami, the only real advantage I see for Miami is if it's early in the season and you got a team that's not used to that heat, right? Same thing with Jacksonville. If you go to Jacksonville in November, Jacksonville ain't got no daggone home field advantage, right? There's not enough there to bake into the line. But college is much different, all right? You got a bunch of college kids tailgating, drinking all day. The environment, I will make the argument there is no NFL stadium. Chiefs, Packers, all those top tier teams that have great home crowds that can top Beaver Stadium or the Big House or the Horseshoe when they get rocking, right? You just can't, right? So I want to look at those. And when I look at home field advantage, if I get Stanford that's got the betting splits that fall the way I want them, and I got a home dog that if it gets to like 9.5, lay an extra 10 cents, buy it to plus 10. Now I got a two possession game. Again, I know Stanford, they'll be lucky to get to 5 wins. But again, we're not looking for an outright victory. We're looking for a cover, right? And that's the difference on that one. So Stanford, be on the lookout for that. Next Saturday, Kent State and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh laying 23.5. Another one that stands out, Connecticut and Maryland. That one was at 21.5. It's now dropped to under 21. It is 20.5 is what the Terps are laying. Again, betting splits, right? 63% of the money on Maryland, 15% or 63% of the tickets rather on Maryland, only 15% of the handle on them. Reverse that, UConn, 37% of the ticket count, but 85% of the money. Again, everybody's down on UConn. I get it. They had a horrific year under Jim Moore. But remember the year before, they came out like gangbusters and surprised everybody. I think Connecticut's better than people give them credit for. And I think Maryland's way overrated. That's a big number. Like Maryland struggles. Like you don't see them blowing people out. And again, I'm not saying UConn's any bargain here, but 3 touchdowns is a lot. And it's a lot in a week 1 game where it's the first time with pads. It's the first time with live bullets flying in a game. That's a lot unless you are an elite Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, a team that can really put points up and can stop you on the defensive side of the football. So Penn State, that line's down to 10 flat. At one time, it had touched 11.5 offshore, but now it's a flat 10, 65% of the handle, or 65% of the tickets Penn State, 35% West Virginia, 40% of the handle Penn State, 60% West Virginia. No real edge here other than anytime James Franklin is supposed to do something great, he comes up small. So there's no way I'm laying it on the road with Penn State. It would be either be West Virginia to cover or nothing. For right now, for me, it's nothing. I want to see how that plays out. Virginia Tech at Vanderbilt. This is a real interesting one. Virginia Tech's got almost everybody back. They're planning on a really good year, and Vanderbilt, well, they're Vanderbilt every year. But Virginia Tech laying 14 on the road and the whole world being on them, I think that's just something you want to watch out for in your handicapping, right? Now, again, I don't have Vanderbilt power rated very well, and I do like this Virginia Tech team. But remember, a lot of people get really high on teams and all, they got all these starters back, and I do think that's great information. I think it's valuable information, right? It's got to go into where you set your lines. It's got to go into the handicap. You got to go into that has to go into your breakdown, right? If you're going to break the board. So with that, though, when I see 89% of the handle Virginia Tech's way and 11% of it Vanderbilt's way, and the line goes from 14.5 to 14, and there's a couple 13.5s out here. Actually, DraftKings has a 13.5 posted right now. Like, you just can't. I mean, I feel like should be a red flag. Again, red flags don't mean you got to run to the window and bet it. But I think you also got to be very conscious about not saying, okay, we know Vanderbilt's horrible, so we're just automatically going to lay points on the road with Virginia Tech. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Rule number 1 in football, NFL, and especially college, if you lay points on the road, you'll go broke. You'll never make a profit laying points on the road consistently. Will not happen. It's hard enough to win a football game. Now you're asking a team to cover double-digit points on the road. That's really, really hard, okay? And you might say, oh, well, Michigan did it all the time last year. Well, yeah, because it's Michigan. And, again, being a team by 10 is easy. Now set them trying to beat a team by 42.5, right? There's some points, too, where you look at it and say, okay, Temple has no shot in hell of beating Oklahoma, but I'm not laying 42.5 with Oklahoma either. I don't care if the game is at home. They can win it 62-0. Good for them and good for everybody that bet Oklahoma. I just have to have rules, and one of them is I'm not going to be laying 30, 40 points in a football game, and I'm not going to lay points on the road. What I will do, if it's 3.5 or less, I'll spend the extra juice for the money line because I do see a lot of 1 to 3 point victories, a team eking one out on the road they were the better team. Just that home team, like we just talked about, home field advantage means a lot, right? The time the game is played, is it a night game where those college kids got all day to get drunked up? Like, there's a lot that goes into where does my power rankings fall? Where are we at on the injury front? So much that goes into it there. Zipping on down the list, Georgia Clemson. This one supposedly neutral site, but the Georgia Dome there, Mercedes-Benz, has become Georgia's home away from home between the SEC Championship and college football playoff. But Georgia laying 14.5, 78% of the tickets and 77% of the money on Georgia, 22% of the tickets and only 23% of the handle on Clemson. I think everybody's really, really down on Dabo. I haven't heard anybody say one positive word about Clemson. Most people haven't even talked about Clemson. And I think they're going to give Georgia a little bit of problems. Georgia's ultimately going to win this game. Georgia's ultimately going to be 11-1 or 12-0 this year. I think they're the best team in the country. I think Ohio State's the second best team in the country. I don't think I'm a bandwagon rider because, quite honestly, everybody in the world thinks those are the two best teams, right? But I think Clemson could hang in there. I can absolutely see Georgia up 17 or 20 points, and all of a sudden a backdoor late meaningless touchdown by Clemson gets the backdoor cover. 14 and a half, that's a lot to give Dabo in a neutral site game. And again, Kubnik is back at quarterback, didn't play the greatest, but had some spots where you're like, okay. And Clemson has a ton of returning starters, right? And they're peed off. And Dabo's a good coach. Again, I know a lot of people like to beat up on Dabo because of the transfer portal and all that. I really want to see this Clemson-Georgia game. This is one I'm going to watch. One, I know Georgia's that good, but I want to see how elite are they. Because if they come out and blow Clemson out by 30, I'm like, all right, well, then they're even better than I thought. But I think Clemson here is real tricky. I want to see where the line moves. Want to keep an eye on the betting splits. Again, next Monday and Wednesday and Friday, it's going to be pretty much, we'll run through baseball early, and it's all going to be about college football, and it's going to be about talking futures with the NFL, kind of do some predictions. I'm going to have a special guest do a quick YouTube short for you guys that we'll put out. Going to do a quarterback island with a good friend of the show. So be looking for that. Something we'll post out there. You guys will really, really like rating quarterbacks in the NFL. South Dakota State, Oklahoma State. Jackrabbits, number one team ranked in the FCS. Oklahoma State, I really, really love. I think they're going to be in the college football playoff. But I got to tell you what, laying 10 and over 86% of the tickets and over 86% of the handle on Oklahoma State, give me the Jackrabbits, baby. Like I said, two plays that I like right now in college football that I'm sold on. I'm going to bet them. We're going to give them out. I love Georgia Tech plus 11. And I also love South Dakota State plus 10. I think both of those games are what we look for in dogs. It's what we look for in betting splits. This South Dakota State team is really, really good. And remember, Oklahoma State, as good as they were and had a great season last year, they're going to have another one. Mike Van Gundy, he's a man. He's 40. He does great things. But I've seen this team struggle against lower opponents outside of the Big 12. You got to remember, they got a grueling schedule. Are they really worried about South Dakota State the way they should be? As to where South Dakota State, they're stepping up in competition, playing an Oklahoma State team in Stillwater. The Jackrabbits are going to be jacked. So those are two plays I definitely like. Indiana laying 20 and a half against Florida International. Skip down here a couple others, just looking at odd betting splits. Syracuse with the new coach laying 17 and a half against Ohio at home. Now, I know Ohio's no bargain, but when you're only getting 26% of the tickets and only 4% of the money, again, that's a system as far as it goes that follows. We'll dig into that game a little bit more. Miami right now, minus 2.5. Everybody's loading up on Miami, yet the line hasn't moved. Gives me a reason to pause. Now, look, Miami's loaded, man. Cam Ward could win the Heisman. Miami could be back. We say this every year. But Mario Cristobal, I can't trust him. I can't trust the guy. So it's going to be interesting if the money keeps pouring in Miami. I'm really, really surprised that line hasn't went to 3, right? I'm really surprised it hasn't went to 3. Not saying I would take the Gators plus 3. But again, this is the thing. If you're going to play Miami, don't lay 2.5 because this is a rivalry. These kids have played each other in high school, like Florida, Florida State, Miami. Those 3 teams, the 2 games against the other one, that's what they want. They want if they didn't win any other games on their schedule, those are the games they want to win. I think you have to really look at that and take into consideration. If you like Miami, I can totally see 21-20, 24-23. Don't lay the 2.5. Lay the $1.35 on the money line, even if it ticks up, as long as you don't get over $1.50. Unless it's a really good team you feel really comfortable about, okay, then I might branch out to like a minus 170. Again, juice only hurts you if you lose the game, but you do have to be conscious about, okay, games over 500 is one thing, but if I'm laying a bunch of $2 and $3 favorites, that's a whole nother, right? It kind of defeats the purpose there. Colorado State and Texas. Texas, 65% of the ticket count, only 15% of the handle. They're laying 33.5 to Colorado State. Texas has a very grueling schedule, very, very grueling schedule. Week 2, they hop over to the Big House in Michigan. We're currently on the look ahead. They're laying 3.5 to Michigan. I just wonder, 33.5 is a really big, really, really big number against Colorado State. Want to see which way ultimately that goes. Boise State, a team everybody's howling. Boise State laying 12 at Georgia Southern. 89% of the handle on Boise State, only 11 on Georgia Southern. We're going to get into that breakdown a little bit more. Alabama laying 31, 85% of the ticket count. 88% of the money rolls towards the Crimson Tide. Western Kentucky, 15% of bets, 12% of handle. So we'll see how the Hilltoppers, how that line moves for them. Fresno State and Michigan. I've said this before. Michigan, I don't know if they're going to be the same. DraftKings has it at 21. There's some 20.5s out there. There's 2 21.5s I see offshore. Fresno State plus 21.5. That's a game that I'm really, really looking at. They're only getting 19% of the ticket count compared to 81% for Michigan, but the money's almost 50-50. This is pros versus Joes. Everybody's going to be like, Fresno State, who are they? Fresno State, we're going to dig into them more next week, but I think once we give the data and go through it, I think you're going to kind of see what I see as far as the Bulldogs from Fresno State maybe being able to cover this. Notre Dame, Texas A&M, we'll get into that. That line is done totally flipped around. Notre Dame was a 1.5-point favorite. They lose the left tackle. I get there should be some line adjustment rather for that. However, Texas A&M being a 2.5-point favorite is a little puzzling. So we want to follow that market a little more. JMU, right? Coach gone, quarterback gone. JMU laying 7 at Charlotte. JMU, 79% of the tickets, only 10% of the handle. Charlotte on the flip side, 21% of the tickets, 90% of the handle. Remember, the 49ers did some good things as the season went on last year. JMU is a powerhouse. I'm not saying I'm going to bet against JMU. Just another game. Hey, start looking around. Again, we'll talk about that more next week. LSU, USC. Everybody's down on USC in this game, but LSU always struggles out the gates. This one's going to be at Allegiant Stadium. They want to see how that ultimately looks as the line right now. 88% of the tickets and 82% of the handle is on LSU. So really want to look at where that line falls. A couple look-aheads that I wanted to talk about real quick and throw out there, just give you something to chew on. Saturday, September 21st, Oklahoma at home laying 3.5 to Tennessee. Tennessee's got the Heisman hopeful quarterback. I love what Josh Heupel did with the Volunteers. Want to look at that. Clemson laying 7.5 to NC State at Clemson. NC State is ranked. They're live. The game of the weekend that weekend, and this one could ultimately determine a lot in the Big 12. I think they're the 2 best teams in the Big 12. Utah goes on the road at Stillwater. Cam Rising in his 7th year. He's on the Stetson Bennett, Tyler Hansbrough playing for college. Utah laying 1 at Stillwater and Oklahoma State. 85% of tickets on Utah. 15% of the tickets on Oklahoma State. 69% of the money on Utah. 31% Oklahoma State. That Oklahoma State defense, I want to see how they react. I want to see Cam Rising miss pretty much the whole year last year. Want to see how he goes. Friday, September 27th, Miami hosts Virginia Tech. They're laying 7.5. Saturday, September 28th, Georgia at Alabama. Georgia laying 4.5. It'll be interesting to see how both teams play if that look-ahead line moves. So we'll be tracking that. Saturday, October 5th, Florida State's laying 4 to Clemson. I think that one's going to shrink. If you're a Clemson believer, I think it's going to go closer to 3 way before it's going to go to 4.5. Could be wrong, but I think Clemson's going to come out strong, and I think Florida State's going to struggle here a little bit out of the gate. Iowa's visiting Ohio State. Ohio State laying 24. Listen, I'm a big believer in Iowa. I know that offense is horrific. I always have beat them up over the past couple of years. If you've heard me on other shows or you've heard me on shorts or whatever, I've not been a fan of Iowa, even though Kirk Ferentz is able to get that team deep every year and somehow get to 8 or 9 wins every year. But if McNamara stays healthy, and looking at Iowa's schedule, the only game this year Iowa's going to be an underdog is at Ohio State. So all their focus can be on that game. I like the Hawkeyes. If that line ticks up 25-26, especially if Ohio State comes right out of the gate and starts blowing people away, be interesting to see where that goes. Michigan laying 8.5 on the road at Washington. I don't know what to make of either one of these teams. That's on Saturday, October 5th also. Both of these teams have just lost so much. Both of them have brand new head coaches. Ohio State at Oregon, Saturday, October 12th, maybe the game of the year. Oregon laying 1. That same weekend, you got Penn State laying 4 at USC. Texas on the look ahead, minus 8.5 at Oklahoma. So those are just some look aheads as far as college football goes. Again, Georgia Tech this Saturday. We're going to get into that and talk about it a little bit more. Really like Georgia Tech if you can get an 11 out there. Today in baseball, we're going to go with the Baltimore Orioles, like I said, plus 110. They're on the money line with Zach Eflin. The Giants minus 230 on the money line. Again, I'm not a big juice guy. I don't like laying that, but I really believe in them. Over 8. In the Twins game, you're going to have to pay some juice, minus 120, but I think it's better than going over 8.5, minus 105. The Phillies, minus 105 with Aaron Nola. The Brewers, minus 105 with Myers. Those are the 5 plays that we're going to go with today. Catch us on Friday, 9:30 Eastern time. We'll go somewhere between 10:30 and 11 o'clock. Want to dig into this college football Saturday more, and then we'll look ahead to the NFL. We got preseason. Don't think there's a lot of opportunities. You're not going to see a lot of starters, but anything that's there, we'll break it down for you. Hit that subscribe button. Follow us on X. Appreciate y'all. See you Friday.